do a lot of touching, it's a great opportunity for us to be able to extend loving blessings to one another, hand in hand, our arms around our shoulders, our hands on hands, whatever it may be, and I invite you to join. screen in just a moment, we make motzi. A lot of you I know are headed into Shabbat dinner. We make motzi, give thanks for the nourishment of our bodies. I'll invite you as well to click on the link you received today, or just simply to go to the temple's Facebook page, or our YouTube channel, or even our website in order to join with us for our Shabbat evening service, which will begin in a couple of minutes. But first, let us make motzi, and then I'll invite you all to unmute so you can wish each other a Shabbat Shalom together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. We're going to be starting together in just a couple of moments, but first, if you're here on screen, we'd like to unmute and wish you Shabbat Shalom. Here's your opportunity, please.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, Laura. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Agnes and Charlotte feel better. Berta, Anna, Irene. I think I saw Gary and Debbie and Cindy.
King's Blessings Chaos. I love it. You can see it?
Shabbat Shalom, guys. Beautiful.
Peachy wanted to wave to you, so I turned it around for her.
You can say hi, Jacob.
Oh, Jacob wants to say hi. Shabbat Shalom from Jacob. Folks, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to end the Zoom. But if you're able to join us for services, we're going to go straight into our service on either, as I said, website, YouTube, Facebook, all those different ways to join us. In the meantime, I want to wish each and every one of you a Shabbat Shalom. It's so great to see your faces.
Shabbat
Shabbat
Shalom.
Shalom.
Good to see you.
Post-pandemic Shabbat. So I want to first make certain that everybody has a prayer book, and that the prayer book that you picked up should have within it 2 supplemental pages. One is our regular Shabbat supplement that includes additional prayers and blessings that we use on Shabbat, and the other is for counting the Omer. That's at the very end of the service. This goldenrod half page you can just kind of put aside till the end, but you're going to want to keep this guy handy along with your prayer book for our service tonight. And for those of you who are joining with us from home, welcome and Shabbat Shalom. And there is an online prayer book for those who don't actually have a copy of Mishkan Tefillah there in your hands. If you go to the temple's website, leobecktemple.org/live, you will be on our live stream page, and there is a link to click on there for the Friday night prayer book, and you'll be able to follow along with all of the page numbers that we are sharing with those who are here worshiping with us in person. We're going to begin just by wishing each other Shabbat Shalom in melody. That's the only words, and so there's no excuse. If you're thinking to yourself, I'm not much of a Hebraicist, so I have a free pass to not sing along. When the words are only Shabbat Shalom, nobody gets the evening off, and so I invite you to join in singing with me. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. That's all there is to it. Try it. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. This morning, about mid-morning, I sent out a memo to the congregation by email that talked a little bit about this week's Torah portion as a time. It's always seen as something of an interesting quirk, and the commentators on the Torah across the centuries have commented on this, that the holiday of Yom Kippur is introduced in the Torah in this week's Torah portion, which feels like, well, did they not know that actually this is exactly a half a year away from that? We almost couldn't be further away from Yom Kippur. We're a little further away from the past Yom Kippur than we are the next one. I will say this, you maybe think to yourself, well, gosh, this is a season of the year, we're not even remotely thinking of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rabbis don't have that privilege. We think about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur all year long. So the fact that it appears in the Torah portion right now doesn't seem as much of a quirk for us. But in all seriousness, at this time of year, it's still, many, many months away. And so why would it show up in the Torah at this season of the year? I believe, and there are so many other teachers who have said so, as I did in my message sent out to all of you today, that it is a very intentional reminder that the work of Yom Kippur, the self-search that that day is designed to tease out of us, is not supposed to be, it was never intended to be a one-time-a-year kind of enterprise. In fact, it was designed to set the table for the striving we would do over the course of the full next year to become the people, at least a little closer to becoming the people that we most wish to be. And so here we are, almost half a year away from the next Yom Kippur, and we have this opportunity on Shabbat. And I will say not just this one opportunity, but every time Shabbat comes, an opportunity to hit the pause button on all the other distractions, the things that fill up our lives that make it hard for us to do that sort of self-search. Hit pause and look a little bit within, and to try to figure out the ways in which we both align and maybe don't align with what we're striving for. How close am I to the goal of what it is I'm seeking to be to the people who I love, the people with whom I share community, to those in the world who I do not know, but who await acts of compassion? All of this is what Shabbat is supposed to provide to us as a gift, the opportunity to pause and consider and to realign. And so I want to invite every one of you just to take a quiet moment right now, just to kind of dip inside those waters. Maybe we could take a time during this time just to acknowledge what is one way that since last Yom Kippur to now, in this last half a year, that you've drawn closer, that you've taken some steps to align your actions a little bit more with your ambitions for the person you're seeking to be. Perhaps we can give thanks for that and use it as a springboard to reach to those other corners where we still have some steps to take. So each and every one of us, a little bit of quiet time simply to draw near in thanks to those ways in which we've grown in this half year. The psalms that we sing to enter into Shabbat are designed to help us summon that sensibility of gratitude. It's not easy while we're busy fetching our way through all of the complications that life throws at us, to actually embrace a moment such as this, simply to feel grateful, to take notice of things that we all too often take for granted. We're going to sing at the bottom of page 13 in the Hebrew. The bottom paragraph is the text that we'll be singing, Yismechu HaShamayim, and it is an expression of the psalmist. It comes from Psalm 96. The psalmist is simply saying that not only should we use our voices to sing out in gratitude, but that literally let all of the heavens and the seas and the mountains, let all of God's creation be a collective hymn of thanks for the wonders of creation. And so I invite you to join with me. You'll pick this up as we go along. Bottom of 13, bottom paragraph. Yalalai, lalai, yalalai, lalai, yalalai, 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 lalai, yalalai, lalai, yalalai, lalai, yalalai, 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 yalalai. Yalalai, 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 ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו. ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו. Yalalai, 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 ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו. ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו. Yalalai, 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 yalalai. Let us welcome the Sabbath bride into our midst with the words of the Kabbalists, the mystics, Lecha Dodi. Those words can be found on pages 20 and 21 of the prayer book. We're going to sing verses 1 and 2 on page 20 and verses 5 and 9, top and bottom of page 21. And I invite you to please join in singing with me. Enjoy. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, ישמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ותפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם ניסוחה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. Top of 21. התעוררי, התעוררי, באורך קומי אורי, אורי אורי שדברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי, לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. I invite you to stand and to face the entrance to this sanctuary space. As the Kabbalists taught, we would welcome the Sabbath bride, see her in our mind's eye. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, הנה שבת נקבלה. We're on page 28. Please stay standing for Baruch Hu, our call to worship. Page 28. Let us join together in acknowledging the wonders of creation, the blessing for Ma'ariv Aravim, for noticing the changes from night into day into night. This is all stuff that we take for granted and yet miraculous, especially when one really takes notice and can see the way in which all of creation appears differently in the fading light, in the emerging light, and even in the darkness itself. We'll join together in these words as we prepare to enter into that liminal space between the daylight and the night. Bottom of page 31. I invite you to join with me in reading if you'd like. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, ha-ma'ariv aravim. On the bottom of page 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works in the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael, page 34. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta is found on page 36. I want to invite Abigail Weiner, who will be celebrating becoming a bat mitzvah with us in the month of May, to come forward and leading us in prayer. You can use mine if you want. Up to you. Right here.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווכם אלום ללבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בם בשניך בביתך ובכל בדרך ובכנופיך ובכלוליך ובתמות עבודך ולא תפרות בעיניך ובאשם למזוזותיך וישתדך למען תשמרו ותיתן מצותי ויתן קדושים לעולם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתיכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
If you'll turn to page 41, we'll use these words to prepare us for entering into our song of liberation in prayer that all of humanity will know the gift of liberation. Right now we know, not only here in our country, but certainly in too many troubled corners of the world, those still seeking to make the journey we celebrate every year at this time of year with Pesach, the journey from enslavement to liberation. May we be a part of making that true for all. On page 41, sing the song of men and women, joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. Page 40. Adonai, Mika Mocha Nedar Bakodesh Nora Tihilo Hosei Feled Nora Tihilo Hosei Feled Micha Mocha Bailim Adonai Micha Mocha Nedar Bakodesh. If you turn to the bottom right-hand corner of the supplemental page, there you'll find the words for our nighttime prayer. We ask God to cause us to lie down in peace as night descends. Enable the night to be peaceful for us, not haunted with nightmares. Let us awaken come morning and be the light that surrounds us. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom, L'shalom V'ha'amidenu Malkeinu L'chaim Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 Just your voices. Our Amidah, our standing prayer, begins on page 46 with Adonai Sifatai. I invite you to stand if you're able. again, page 46. Adonai Svatai Tivta Adonai Svatai Tiftach Ufi Agid Tehilatecha Ufi Agid Tehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekoneh Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot Ve'imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei V'nehem, Leman Shemo Be'ava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, Mechayei kol atah, Rav lehoshia, Morid hatah, Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechayei kol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofech holim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato nishenei afar, Micha mocha ba'al givurot, Umido melach, Melech memit umechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'emanata lachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha sela. Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. The Amidah continues in silence. We'll continue praying the words of the prayer book through page 62. It's also, of course, an opportunity to spend a few moments with our own personal private meditations. I invite you to remain standing for the Amidah or to be seated whenever you're ready. on page 60. The Amidah always concludes with Birkat Shalom, a prayer for peace. For this world torn by unrest, let our words of prayer turn into deeds of commitment, to be makers of peace here in this world and in corners of the world we may not ever know, but where the gift of our resolve can be a part of turning these prayers into reality. We join on page 60. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael v'chol eit v'chol shah bishlomecha. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. So yesterday, as many of you likely know, yesterday was Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day all over the world. And it was observed in ways that have become familiar to most of us over the years. Rituals of mourning for the 6 million, of course, the sharing of survivor stories to ensure the Nazi atrocities will never be forgotten, historical accounts of the depths of the depravity, schools teaching their students through reenactments. What would you take with you if you were suddenly deported? Where would you look for strength if your loved ones were stripped away from you? All of it designed to keep the savagery of what was done to our people just 80 years ago somehow fresh in our minds and souls. This is what our own observances of Yom HaShoah here at Leobek Temple have looked and felt like over the years. We've invited survivors, oftentimes, to speak and to interact with our kids and with us here at the temple. We've welcomed eyewitnesses who fought in the war and who liberated the camps after it. Some of you may remember when he's now gone, unfortunately, but one of our founding members, Dick Giesberg of blessed memory, served in the unit that liberated Dachau He was 20 years old. He was an American Jew and saw the surprise of what awaited him there. These are the types of experiences that we've had on the Shabbat nearest to Holocaust Remembrance Day. We've viewed films. We've hosted all kinds of other arts programs as well to enable us to feel the suffering and the cruelty anew. We've heard from premier scholars whose work documents the gravity of what took place, including the head of the USC Shoah Foundation created by Steven Spielberg. He has spoken here as well. All of this is what it has meant to never forget. This is why I had to pause when a few months ago I read the following remembrance written by Aharon Appelfeld, a name that may be familiar to you because he's one of Israel's, now deceased, but was for a long time one of Israel's most renowned novelists. He had survived the Holocaust as a child. He was 13 years old when the camps were liberated. His remembrance goes like this. For me, and I hope this won't surprise you, memories of the war are bound up with a lot of love. Endless love. Everything was catastrophic. Everything was death. On the personal level, though, there was extraordinary devotion. If you said a nice word to someone, you had saved him because he had been on the brink of death. Not to mention someone handing you a slice of bread or a quarter of a slice of bread. On the brink of the abyss, on the brink of death, there was tremendous love, he wrote. My world did not remain that of the hangman. My world did not remain that of unending evil that has no repair. I remained with people, and I loved them. Appelfeld's words instantly took hold of me when I first read them. And I wondered, should our commitment to never forget remain that of the hangman, that of unending evil that has no repair? Or is our call, especially in a world where few survivors and few eyewitnesses remain, to continue growing into and through our Holocaust remembrance? What I wondered is the memory of someone, of entire generations now to come, who were never there. What is that memory? And what will the function of that memory be? A few months ago, I asked these questions and studied this matter with some of you at our monthly Topical Torah session, shortly after I first discovered Appelfeld's words. And we learned that a robust movement is now afoot in the Jewish world to transform the definition of Holocaust remembrance, of never forget. The argument is that Holocaust remembrance has largely centered upon sustaining and conveying the trauma, and perhaps most importantly, transmitting the trauma to future generations so that they might feel some part of it and never forget. And yet we know from the teachings of those most expert in trauma care that reenacting a trauma repeatedly, ritually even, serves only to destabilize the healing process, not to advance it. New generations of victims are cultivated by this and paralyzed anew by the atrocity. And we are left to wonder, is this the Holocaust remembrance that we want, that we need? Is it even the Holocaust remembrance that the 6 million would want for us? Stories like Aharon Appelfeld's amplify just how much it wasn't the dying that required sanctification in the aftermath of the Holocaust. It was the living. This is not to say that we should ever forego honoring the dead, of course. But it is to ask what those who were murdered were attempting to say with their lives all the way up until the moment that their lives ended. Should this not be the focus of our remembrance of the Shoah, the focus of the lessons we endeavor to teach about it. We know, especially in an era of undeniably rising anti-Semitism, that there are grave consequences that come with reenacting our collective trauma and destabilizing our process of healing. A terminally traumatized person discovers their victimhood to be sacred. It cannot be trespassed, and it begs to be anointed the greater victimhood among all of humanity's victimhoods. We have seen what that perpetual trauma produces in our American politics. It has not brought out our best in this country. Our competition among the victimhoods for who is most wounded, who is most deserving of redress, who is most to blame for our suffering. And it would be impossible to miss what the competition among the victimhoods has produced between the Israeli and Palestinian peoples. Both have managed to conscience actions toward one another that they would never, ever choose if the victimhood wasn't the only, or at least the loudest, voice in their ear. So what might a life-centered Holocaust remembrance, one that breaks forward from the perpetual renewal of the trauma, look like? Israeli scholar Michal Govrin wrote about this recently and reminded us that we already possess an authentic and very different mechanism for remembrance in Jewish life. The mechanism we use when remembering the experience of bondage and suffering in Egypt. It's fresh for all of us. We have Passover, we have Pesach, and we have our Seder tables. While Holocaust remembrance rituals, much to the frustration of many of us, have struggled to maintain their salience with American Jews as the years have progressed. The Passover Seder, by contrast, has surged to become the single most commonly observed Jewish ritual, even more than the High Holy Days. Yes, Passover recounts a story that happened much longer ago than the Holocaust did. So it's little wonder that the trauma is nowhere near as fresh. But it is still a story of enslavement, of suffering, of plagues, and of death. And yet it is a story told by both young and old, and everyone is commanded to see themselves as if they are the ones blessed to survive, blessed to go forth from the perils of bondage into freedom. There are still plenty of bitter herbs to be eaten, and they must be tasted. But the ritual is only gaining momentum in our lives, in our Jewish community. Why? Because, says Professor Govrin, the remembrance does not reconstruct the past. It contemplates the past in order to act in the present. It aims not at representation, but at transformation. This is why we find it so easy to draw in the story of Ukrainian refugees at our Seder tables, while our Holocaust remembrance remains bound to our past and bound to us and us alone. With all of this in mind, Professor Govrin convened a multidisciplinary and cross-generational group of scholars, artists, scientists, philosophers, thinkers, and writers, whose work led to the shaping of a Haggadah for Holocaust remembrance. A Holocaust remembrance Seder, which would enable the generations to come, the ones who would not know survivors personally, to remember even if we were not there, just as we do at the Seder table on Pesach. That type of application of the story enables us to look to the past, yes, but not to become a hostage there. We get to apply the past in our present and recommit ourselves to living the timeless lessons of those who first lived that story, those like Aharon Appelfeld, who cleaved to life and to love. We get to breathe those lessons into our future, and not just for ourselves, but for all of the human family. I cannot predict whether the Holocaust Remembrance Seder is coming to a temple near you anytime soon. That will be a conversation if it is to happen, an evolution requiring readiness and eagerness from all of us, not just from me. But I am certain that we will, whether we like it or not, whether we choose to or not, we will continue to transition when it comes to what we choose never to forget from the Shoah. If we wish for our remembrance of the Shoah to remain vital within us and between us. Tonight, we are going to light candles yet again in remembrance. These familiar 6 yellow candles, obviously a symbol for the 6 million. They have been, as you can see, lit on Holocaust Remembrance Shabbatot past. But let them not remain that of unending evil that has no repair, to quote Appelfeld. Let them not be in remembrance of and return into trauma again and again. Let these lights, in memory of 6 million unfinished lives, let these lights kindle in us responsibility. Responsibility to speak a nice word, share a little bread, to remain with people in love. It is when we open our hearts to love that we possess a precious human capacity to take some piece of the joy, the feeling of renewal, the feeling of wholeness that Shabbat can create for us when we create Shabbat community with one another and bring it to those who are struggling most with life itself. There are in our families, in our circles of friendship and community, work, school, those who are struggling with illness, with brokenness, with despair, with disillusionment. We want to bring them some taste of the sweetness we are creating here. And so in a moment, we'll join together in singing our prayer for healing, Mishaberach, which can be found in the prayer book in the middle of page 253. But before we join together in song and prayer, I want to invite anyone who would wish to speak aloud the name of someone in your personal circle you would like to include in our collective prayer for healing on this Shabbat to stand at this time, and when my eyes meet yours, to speak those names aloud to our congregation. And of course, those worshiping with us from home to take advantage of this opportunity as well to speak those names aloud. for all of them, for all of us. We pray for healing, strength, renewal, light. The words can be found in the middle of page 253. Mi shebeirach avotenu mikol habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu mikol habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Aleinu can be found at the bottom of page 282. If you're able, please rise at this time. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Page 287. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד. A musical meditation to help prepare us for the recitation of Kaddish. The words can be found in the prayer book on page 291. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we love. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the stars that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. We remember. As we prepare to recite Kaddish prayer this evening, we remember especially Carl Baruch, Muriel Bodek, Richard A. Davidson, Les Davis, Lowell Davis, Peter Martin Etchito, Janet Fenster, Louis Flom, Walter Gee, Robert George, Michael Greenberg, Rebecca Gutman, Isaac Holtz, Sidney Howard, Fanny Jacobs, Patricia Victor Kaplan, David Kaufman, Daniel Kleinberg, Shirley Levy, Maxine List, Patricia Ann Kahan Mirish, Louis Newman, Kate Elizabeth O'Hanlon, Craig Pierce, Ruth Rogier, Bertha Rothbart, Hannah J. Schwartz, Eric J. Scholl, Jerome Simon, Joan Sobelman, Bernice Spiegel, Betty Ruth Sussholtz, B.B. Trabish, Charles Wax. Are there other names we should include? If so, please speak them aloud. We think as well of all those who we name in our hearts, and also those who have perished in the millions from COVID-19 all over the world. We think, of course, also of those who have perished as innocent victims of violence. In a world we must lead forward from violence to peace. And holding them all close at heart, we say, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the memory of the righteous, is an everlasting blessing. As together we give thanks for the blessing of life with the words of Mourner's Kaddish, found on page 294. If you're able, please rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chaye echon u'v'yom echon, u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, b'agala u'v'zman kariv imru. Amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei amaya, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו Amen. May the giver of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved among us, and let us together say Amen. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל Israel vehimeru amen. Ose shalom bimromav hu yahase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael vehimeru amen. This is when, right before we bid each other farewell and Shabbat Shalom, this is when you need that little goldenrod page. This is when you need the little goldenrod page. This page includes a blessing for counting the Omer. It is our custom in the Jewish tradition, literally to count the days. To count the days from the beginning of Pesach until Shavuot. Why do we do that? Anybody have an idea? What are we counting the days historically from and to? From Egypt to Sinai. From our leaving bondage. Talk about a living embodiment. The counting of the Omer is an embodiment of the message that we shared here tonight. That we are celebrating, even while we tell a story, a painful story of hundreds of years of bondage, that we are literally counting the days until that story results in liberation and responsibility. Responsibility that comes with law, the gift of Torah. Shavuot is the symbol in our tradition for the arriving at Sinai and the receiving of Torah. And so let us count the days until Torah will lift up our lives anew, a brand new cycle. And so the blessing for counting the Omer, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, vitzivanu al sfirat haomer. That means we praise you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has given us commandments to sanctify our lives, and among them this one concerning the counting of the Omer, the counting of the days from Pesach to Shavuot. Let's count in Hebrew and then in English. This day of the Omer, Hayom Arba'a Asar Yom Shehem Shnei Shavuot La Omer. Today is 14 days, which are 2 weeks of the Omer. I never miss an opportunity to point out that once we get through counting 7 weeks worth of days, we will actually arrive at Shavuot, and it is a night not to be missed at Leobek Temple because it is always the celebration of our confirmation service. Our 10th graders, with their wild creativity, bring us Torah anew when we arrive at Sinai. And oh my goodness, it is a night you don't want to miss. So circle it on your calendar, count the days, and join us there. And along the way, between now and then, we will celebrate Bat Mitzvah with Abigail. We'll have all kinds of other great smachot to enjoy. But waiting at the end of this counting will be Shavuot and the Torah brought to us through new young eyes. To all of you who joined us here today, tonight, in person, and with us on screen as well, I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom u'Menucha, a restful, reflective, renewing Shabbat day. Shabbat Shalom.